Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rebecca Saunders Show. I am joined by my friend Liz Nable, who is a media strategist and coach for small business owners, taking them from hidden in the closet to being a household name. Welcome to the show, Liz.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat to you.
I'm super excited because I know the glorious work that you do and you teach small business owners how to get into the media, right? Into the public eye.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Your background? You weren't always a small business owner. What's your background in the media and what has got you to where you are now?
I think my background is probably quite unique to small business ownership. And I kind of realized that once I opened my first business in 2012.
Yeah.
My first career out of university, I was a TV news journalist. So I started working in regional New South Wales in Prime TV in Wagga.
Were you on the camera?
Yes, on camera. Yes. Yep. And then I moved into 24-hour news at Sky in Sydney, and then eventually onto some of the major commercial networks like Channel 9 and Channel 10. And then I guess the pivotal point in my career was when my husband was transferred to the States, to New York for his work. And so I worked as a freelance news journalist in New York for 6 years. And that gave me a really good breadth of experience of different kinds of news stories, kind of everything from like breaking news to like the UN General Assembly, red carpets, celebrity news, all that kind of stuff. So
whole gamut of stuff.
Whole gamut. Yeah. So when most Australian commercial networks just don't have the budget to have bureaus everywhere. And so when you're Johnny on the spot out somewhere where stuff happens like New York, you get lots of really cool stories. So it was a really incredible experience. So then from New York, we started having a family in New York and we came back to Australia. And long story short, we both decided we weren't kind of satisfied where we were with our careers and what opportunities were available to us in Australia. I think it was a bit of a rude shock coming back to a much smaller market and much more limited opportunities.
Yeah.
And I guess when I think about it now, I don't know if it was consciously what I was saying to myself 10 years ago, but I knew that I didn't want to work, at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night anymore or 4 o'clock on a Monday morning. And I really wanted a life. By that point, we had kids that I designed. And so we started looking at business ideas probably early 2012 and opened our first business in mid-June 2000. So 6 months later, 2012. So bit of a random career change from TV news journalist to running a small business. It was a fitness business that we first opened. It gives me lots of kind of a unique perspective on small business.
Yeah, completely. And your business is definitely not in a media way at all for those first 10 years, right? You said you were in the fitness space. That's a whole new skill set, a new, business owner skill set. But I'm curious, when you moved to New York, were you working predominantly for Australian publications whilst you were over there, or were you doing a mixture of US and Aussie stuff? Because I would think that the target market and the way you have to write for both write articles to get the attention of both Aussies and Americans is very different.
It is very different. And I was also restricted for the first probably 3 years because of my visa. Yes. So I think it's called an I visa. I don't know if it's still called an I visa now. That was really easy for me to get. And I got that through Channel 10 when I left there to go to the US. And it basically means as a journalist, you can work for international outlets, but you can't work for domestic US outlets. And once my visa changed, I could then work for US outlets. But in terms of the work that I did in New York for the homegrown, the CNBC and Good Morning America and that sort of thing, I was more working as a producer, sort of creating. I wasn't doing the voiceovers and that sort of thing because that is a totally different beast in the US. Probably something if I'd stayed for long enough, I would absolutely have done. But I got a lot of work doing interviews that were then overlaid with a US, face or accent. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So I love listening to your stories. And today we're not talking about the stories of like all the articles that you wrote over there, but I can see why it was so diverse. And I'm curious now then, moving into business, you still have your bricks and mortar business.
Mm-hmm.
You're still running the fitness space, but you're taking almost a pivotal turn and getting your hands back in the journalism media
Yeah.
space. And I've been watching you grow that, particularly in regional Australia, in terms of what you're going out with. What I think they're workshops, you call them, right?
Yes.
Workshops when you're
Yeah.
out there. Putting knowledge and tools in the hands of small business owners across the country to get them into the media,
Yeah.
which you and I were talking very much before we hit the record button about the constant demand of content creation, and it's ever changing, and it feels all consuming. But media is a completely different beast that maybe people haven't thought about getting their name in, right?
Yeah, I think, look, 10 years ago, the traditional media was, when you said the word media, people would think, TV, radio, magazines. But interestingly, on Friday in the last workshop that I did, when I asked at the beginning of the workshop about what they hoped to achieve in the media from what they'd learned that day, many of them sort of thought I meant social media. So I think it's interesting how you say media these days and people assume you mean social media. But what I teach, we definitely have parts of the workshops we go into social media, but the main tools that I'm teaching is about helping to grow your business by leveraging the media and free PR. So for a lot of small business owners, I think what happened when I started my business, I just naturally marketed it well because I understood what the media wanted. I understood what a good news story was and what good pictures looked like. I understood what a good relationship looked like with the contacts that I had and how to make it really easy for them to do their job. So I would often, for the first sort of 2 or 3 years, particularly in the beginning when it was a bit of a novelty, the kind of business that we'd opened, it was so easy to get featured, news.com.au, Women's Agenda, Smart Company, Sunrise, everywhere wanted what we had because I knew, A, I knew who to contact, B, I knew what to say and what made a good news story, and C, I would make it really easy for them by having talent ready to go and doing all that stuff. Yeah. So I would do that. That all came naturally to me. But I guess when I looked around, I was like, no one else is really doing this. Like, why it's so easy? But to me, it was easy because I knew it. I knew how to do it. And so for the last, long before COVID, I teamed up with a girlfriend of mine, Mel Brown, who you know very well, and I would help do media workshops for her clients. She was an accountant at that point. So I was just doing.
First met actually at one of those workshops.
Yeah, you were there. And so I sort of had it in my mind, like I would love to teach these skills to small business owners, but obviously you're actually running a business at the same time. So I just kind of did it piecemeal. And then once COVID came along, I was like, okay, how can I scale that knowledge? And that's kind of when I got into the online course world. And I obviously do real life events to kind of build the business and meet people in person. That nothing replaces the real life connection that you make with people. But yeah, I realized I could scale it much more quickly and create a course online that people could do at their own leisure and then obviously, talk with me through Facebook groups and emails and that sort of thing if they have questions and feedback. So that's kind of how it came to be. And yeah, it seems apparent that lots of small business owners didn't even know this was an avenue they could pursue.
Yeah, no, well, I didn't really until I think we met probably 5 or 6 years ago now. If I remember, like right back then thinking, okay, this is a really new, like almost a novice way. And my background's in media in the UK, in local media. So nothing to the same ilk as you whatsoever. But I hadn't actually thought of putting it as a story and pitching it in that way. But I noticed just then you said, you knew how to make it easy for the journalists you were pitching to, and I'm all about making things easy, right? Like, so what do you mean by that? Like, if someone's going to want to feature in some of these magazines, in the newspaper, get an article out there, how do they go about making it easy?
Oh, there's so many ways, but if we start at the pitch point, so if you wanted to get featured in a magazine or get a spot on a morning show or a lifestyle show, you have to understand the medium that you're pitching to. If you don't consume the living room, the living room on Channel 10 on Friday nights, you can't pitch to them because you don't really know what their formula is, what their format is, like what their stories look like. Most mediums, magazines, TV, podcasts even, follow a formula, a format that you get used to seeing. One of the most sort of an example I use all the time because it's so easy to use is Australian Story on ABC.
Yep.
So if you watch Australian Story enough, you know there's like 28 minutes that in that person's story that they're profiling, there are multiple highs and lows. So
Yep.
it's not just this person had a terrible car accident and, you know, then they recovered and everything was great. I always know when you get to about the 12th minute that there's something else bad is going to happen before something good happens. So you follow that formula and that's how you pitch. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but generally
top level. Yeah.
Yeah. Top level. So you want to be really familiar with the content that you're trying to achieve. Yeah. Another way you can make it easy is if people ask you at the last minute or they want to feature you, but not exactly how you want it, and they need you to be somewhere that's not convenient to you, you need to go out of your way to make it easy for them, like figuratively speaking as well as literally speaking. You know, if Sunrise call you tonight at 10 o'clock and say, someone's pulled out tomorrow morning, can we profile you as part of our weather segment? You don't then go, oh, well, you know what, it's really late and can I do it tomorrow? And or the next day, you go, yes. And you say yes with no questions asked. And then you get off the phone and you panic and you work it out from there. Yeah. So you don't deny those opportunities. There's no negotiation in those kinds of opportunities. You either take them or forget it. So, and just being easy to talk to as well, particularly if you're being interviewed for something. I've noticed a lot in the podcasts that in my podcast, Enable My Business, that a lot of people get very nervous in front of the camera. I mean, obviously they do because it's not something that comes naturally to a lot of people, but they don't then become good talent to interview. So you won't get asked back again if you waffle on for 35 minutes after they've asked you one question. So if just being a bit savvy about the media, being savvy about what you think they want, that specific media outlet that you're pitching to, and being really easygoing, easy to work with, helping find talent for the job that they're looking for, and just being available to them makes it so much easier for them to get their job done. And then the next time around, they'll just ask you. They won't ask anyone else, and they'll continue to ask you for your comment or your opinion or your ideas into the future.
I love that. And that's something that you've got to build over time though, right? It's a relationship piece with those particular journalists and understanding how they work, how they operate. Is that an easy thing to get started? Is that a case of going on to LinkedIn or reading the mediums or watching them? And, you know, where do you start to build your own little black book?
I think you need to pitch them ideas to start a relationship. Like, I think if you drop into their DMs and just go, hi, you know, I'm Liz and I've got a business, they'll be like, that's great. Like, they get 1 million DMs and hundreds of emails. I think if you can be really savvy, I think knowing what makes a good story is really key, because once you start to pitch them, even if they say no, or even if they don't reply to you, your name will start to become familiar in their inbox. Now, I don't mean like stalk them and send them 10 emails a day, all day, every day. But when good stories come across your lap in your business, that you can identify them and pitch them in a way that's low maintenance. You know, I've just got this story idea. What do you think? And they might not even reply the first few times, but over time they start to go, actually, she's got good ideas. Yeah. You know, and they might email you back and say, listen, it's not right for us now, but, you know, maybe in the summer or whenever, if it's a, you know, time sensitive story or something like that. Yeah. And feel free to ask them for feedback. You won't always get that, but if they give you feedback and say, that's not a story because of A, B, and C, take that feedback on and go back to the drawing board. And next time you pitch, you know, you've got a bit more of an idea of what they're looking for.
And one of the things that I've been doing, which after, you know, a session with yourself, was to actually write the articles first and pitch it directly to that one media outlet to see whether or not they'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of online content. Like a lot of online media organizations need content all the time. So, you know, things like Mamma Mia, Honey, news.com.au, if you look at those, there's a lot of opinion pieces, a lot of first person accounts. So that's an easy way for you to get your writing out there. And you don't need to, this is the thing, you don't need to recreate the wheel. You might then repurpose that piece to put on your blog. Don't do that before they publish it, just FYI.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to let the cat out of the bag before they've actually said.
I'll pull the story. Yeah.
But you might take a blog that you already have and just rejig it a little bit. And if it's relevant to a story of the time, or, you know, I don't know, back in the COVID days, if it was related to COVID or to inflation or to interest rates or to fitness trends, or you would tag that piece on the back of those running stories. So it's relevant to now. And yeah, tons of online particularly are much more likely to take those because they're done. Or they might come back to you and go, you need to tweak this, this, and this, but resubmit and we'll publish it. It's so easy. Yeah. It's crazy how easy.
And I think one of the key things that I've noticed as well, it's easier when I don't pitch it from my business perspective. It's not a sales tool. No. It's an awareness piece.
And that's a really good point. It's never about your business. It's about the story. So if you try and pitch like a salesperson, they will just delete you and they'll never open another email again. So if if your story happens to get mentioned as part of if your business happens to get mentioned as part of a bigger story, that's really what you're looking for. Like say, for example, if you did charity work with your business that was about alopecia, for example.
Yep.
You become a part of the story because you're related to the story in some way, because that's something you're really passionate about and have personal experience with. But it's not about, hey, come buy a video course. It's about, this is my personal experience and this is what I'm trying to do to give back to the community. And it might not even be that, you might not even get that much airtime. It might be more about the charity or more about a little girl that you're helping who's going through the same thing you did at that age. And then they happen to mention your name. And obviously your name is synonymous with your business. Yeah. So it's like brick by brick. It's not an overnight. You're not going to be overnight. Everyone's going to know who you are. It's like a building of rapport and relationships and brand reputation over time.
And it's one of those things where we're in a world of everything needs to be a quick fix, and this isn't one of those things, right? It's a long-term it's a long game for a long-term reward.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people go, oh, well, okay, I've done, one article or whatever it might be, and I got featured. That's great. It doesn't really mean anything in isolation. Like if you have an end goal, then that might be to lift your brand awareness, or it might be to generate sales or something a bit more top level. That's not going to happen instantaneously. It takes time, and you won't be able to quantify sales from media and PR really anyway. Yeah. That's a whole different other podcast.
We're not going to go down that rabbit hole today.
It's probably, but you are lifting brand awareness, and you will start to see people, follow you on social media or comment or engage or, come to your website, or you can quantify it in some ways, but PR and media is not really about sales specifically. It's part of an overall marketing plan at the top level of your business. It's a really important piece of the pie. But if you're looking to go, okay, I got an article in, I was on the Today Show. What do my sales look like today? That may happen depending on.
If you're a product business, right?
Totally. That may happen. You see a spike in sales. But if that's what you're looking for, that's not necessarily an outcome you can control.
Yeah. And so, we've established that it's a long game. We've established that it's hard to track. So it's definitely more of an awareness piece than a sales driver at the beginning. Yeah. Obviously, we don't want to be salesy in inboxes. Where are people going wrong? Like, what are the biggest mistakes that you see when people try and do this half-heartedly without actually giving it its due attention?
I think, one of probably the biggest mistake is people just don't attempt it at all, because it's, we know small business owners, you're wearing 40,000 hats already. You're like, that's just a beast. I don't understand it. And it's not something, I can't go down that rabbit hole. It's too much for me. I've got operations in the day-to-day part of my business. I've got accounting, I've got marketing, I've got sales, I've got HR. So people just ignore it completely. And then when they start to do it, they do things like they'll send like a one blanket PR piece, sort of like a press release in email form, and just shoot it to every single media organization they can think of. And that's never going to work. It's got to be very specific to who you're talking to. If you've got someone's name, who's the editor or the journalist or the writer. I mean, there's so much more to it than just like, it's like a shotgun approach of just, putting it out to 1,000 media organizations and expecting someone to pick it up. That's just not going to happen. And then probably giving up too early and being really impatient about the return on investment. I think if you can set your business up so you've got all the tools ready to go and you've got an end goal in mind, and you're just chipping away at it kind of, each month, each quarter, each year, over time, you'll definitely see results, but you have to be really realistic about what that looks like.
And I think that's the key thing. It's all about right now for me, talking with the podcast episodes this month, is about content planning and working with those professionals and making sure it follows that structure, because the running theme I'm getting in all these conversations is a boring business is a profitable business. And if you can do those tasks on repeat, it sounds repetitive, and it is repetitive, and it can get really boring, but it does pay off.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just like I said, it's a part of the overall marketing plan. It just becomes a part of what you do. And there'll be exciting times when you get great articles or great exposure or great opportunities. And there might be lulls too, when your business is not, a competitor pops up and they're being featured instead, or, you're a winter business and it's summer, or, you know what I mean? So I think it's important just to, it's a little chip away goal. That's the part of the overall marketing plan.
Definitely. And Liz, I know you've touched on it, and I want to share the wisdom that you have with the lovely people that are listening or watching, because we are recording this as a video person. I couldn't not. So if you're listening or watching and you want to know more about Liz and the work that she does and learn how to get into the media, where can they find you, Liz? Where can they learn more?
So liznable.com. And if you pop onto the front page there of the website, or homepage of the website, there's a beautiful little free resource that you can download, and it's the top 10 news story angles you can pitch right now to get featured in the media for free. So it's a great way to get started, because I know it can be a bit overwhelming to even know where to start. But liznable.com, and I'm launching my Media Masters Academy course in September. So if you pop yourself on my subscription list, you'll be the first to know when doors open.
I'm excited to see that, because I've learned it firsthand, so I can only imagine what's inside the course.
Yes.
Liz, thank you so much for coming on the show. There's been some absolute gems, golden nuggets that we can actionable takeaways. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.